There's a moment that feels almost impossible to describe. You're with someone you care about. Nothing is wrong. No argument. No silence. No obvious distance. And yet, something feels off. Their body is there. Their voice is there. Their attention seems present. But emotionally, they're somewhere else. You feel it before you can explain it. Like reaching out and touching air where a person used to be. And the most unsettling part is this. They may not even realize they've left. Emotional distance doesn't arrive dramatically. It slips in quietly, disguising itself as normal, until one day you realize you're close to someone who feels unreachable. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never say out loud. Emotional distance isn't rare. It's everywhere. In relationships that look stable, in families that function well, in friendships that last for years. It's not always rejection. It's not always disinterest. Sometimes it's a deeply ingrained psychological defense, one that once protected someone, but now quietly disconnects them from the people they care about most. And if we're honest, this isn't just about them. Many of us have been emotionally distant without knowing it. We show up, we listen, we support. But when conversations move toward vulnerability, something inside us tightens. We redirect. We intellectualize. We pull back just enough to feel safe again. Not because we don't care, but because caring feels risky. Emotional distance is often misunderstood as coldness or lack of empathy. In reality, it's rarely the absence of emotion. More often, it's the suppression of emotion. The feelings are still there, sometimes intense, sometimes overwhelming, but they're kept at a distance, controlled, muted. Think of it less like a locked door and more like a dimmer switch. The light never fully turns off. It's just turned down low enough that nothing burns. This pattern matters deeply in modern life. We live in a world of constant communication. Messages are instant. Availability is expected. Connection is always one tap away. And yet, many people feel more emotionally isolated than ever. We share opinions, photos, updates, but rarely the parts of ourselves that feel fragile or uncertain. Emotional distance becomes a way to stay connected without being exposed, to be involved without being vulnerable, to belong without being seen. That raises a question most people avoid asking themselves. When was the last time you felt truly known by someone? Not admired, not appreciated, known. The answer to that question often reveals how much emotional distance has quietly shaped your life. To understand where emotional distance comes from, we have to look beneath behavior and into the nervous system. Long before we consciously decide how close we allow people to get, our brains have already made that decision for us. Much of this begins in early attachment. As children, we learn, through repeated emotional experiences, whether closeness is safe or unpredictable, whether expressing needs leads to comfort or disappointment, whether vulnerability is met with care or ignored entirely. When emotional needs are met consistently, closeness tends to feel regulating. But when care is inconsistent, conditional, or absent, the nervous system adapts. A child who learns that expressing emotion doesn't lead to safety may learn something else instead. Needing less hurts less. Over time, that adaptation can turn into emotional self-reliance taken to an extreme. The person grows up capable, composed, and independent, but emotionally guarded. This is often labeled avoidant attachment, but labels don't fully capture what's happening. At its core, emotional distance is a survival strategy. Here's the part that surprises many people. Emotional distance often develops in emotionally intelligent children. Children who learned early how to manage themselves because no one else reliably did. Children who learned to stay calm, observant, self-contained. These traits are often praised. They look like strength, and in many ways, they are. But what protects a child can isolate an adult. Trauma deepens this pattern. Emotional pain doesn't have to be extreme to leave an imprint. Repeated rejection, emotional unpredictability, betrayal, or even subtle neglect teaches the brain to associate closeness with threat. Neuroscientific ally, emotional intimacy can activate the same regions involved in danger detection. The body responds automatically. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, emotional awareness narrows. The system shifts into protection mode. Withdrawal isn't chosen, it's triggered. This is why emotionally distant people often say they feel overwhelmed or suffocated when relationships deepen, even if nothing bad is happening. Their nervous system isn't responding to the present moment. It's responding to memory, to a pattern learned long ago that says, closeness leads to pain. So distance feels calming, control feels safe, and vulnerability feels like exposure. It's important to say this clearly. Not all distance is unhealthy. Boundaries are essential. Emotional walls are different. A boundary is intentional. It's flexible. It adapts as trust grows. An emotional wall is automatic. It stays rigid even when safety is proven. Boundaries say, I care, and I also need space. Walls say, I can't let you see me. Introversion is often confused with emotional distance, but they are not the same. Introversion is about energy. Emotional distance is about protection. An introverted person can be emotionally open and deeply connected. An emotionally distant person may be socially active, competent, even charismatic, yet emotionally unreachable. The difference isn't how much someone talks, it's how much they reveal when it matters. The effects of emotional distance don't stay contained within one person. They ripple outward. For the emotionally distant individual, distance initially feels stabilizing. There's less emotional chaos, fewer demands, fewer moments of exposure. But over time, something else emerges. A quiet loneliness that's hard to explain. They may feel misunderstood, even though they rarely let people truly know them. There's grief there, but it often goes unnamed. For those close to them, emotional distance can feel confusing and painful. Partners, friends, and family often sense the gap and internalize it. They wonder if they're asking for too much, if they're being needy, if something is wrong with them. This dynamic can create a push-pull cycle. One person withdraws to feel safe, the other pursues closeness to feel secure. Without realizing it, both reinforce each other's fears. Distance confirms the belief that intimacy is dangerous. Pursuit confirms the belief that closeness leads to pressure. This isn't about blame. It's about two nervous systems trying to survive using different strategies. Emotional distance often reveals itself through patterns rather than dramatic moments. It can look like keeping conversations intellectual instead of emotional. Feeling uneasy when others express strong feelings. Pulling back just as relationships deepen. Being the reliable one who never asks for help. Struggling to name your own emotions. Feeling relief when plans are canceled. Connecting easily but rarely deeply. It shows up differently depending on context. At work, it can look like extreme professionalism. In friendships, it can look like consistency without intimacy. In romantic relationships, it can look like commitment without vulnerability. On the surface, everything functions. Underneath, something remains untouched. This invites a difficult but powerful reflection. When people interact with you, do they experience emotional presence or emotional politeness? When someone gets closer emotionally, do you soften or do you subtly step back? These questions aren't accusations. They're invitations to awareness. Here's the hopeful truth most conversations about emotional distance miss. Emotional distance is learned, and anything learned can be unlearned. Not through force, not through sudden emotional exposure, and not through shame. Change begins with understanding. When emotional distance is seen not as a flaw, but as a protective strategy that stayed too long, compassion becomes possible. Healing doesn't start with tearing down walls. It starts with noticing them, with curiosity instead of criticism, with moments where you ask yourself, what am I protecting myself from right now? Often, just naming the pattern creates a small opening, a pause. a moment of choice. Connection isn't about being emotionally available all the time. It's about safe presence. And safety grows slowly through consistency, patience, and emotional honesty. Emotional distance doesn't mean you're broken. It means you adapted. But adaptation doesn't have to be permanent. The wall that once helped you survive can become the barrier that keeps you unseen. Awareness, gentle, non-judgmental awareness, is often the first crack. If something in this reflection felt uncomfortably familiar, let it be information, not a verdict. Understanding doesn't demand immediate change. It creates the conditions for it. Emotional closeness isn't about losing yourself. It's about being seen without disappearing. This is Psychora, where we explore the hidden patterns shaping human behavior. If this resonated, stay with us. There's more beneath the surface.